मेरठ के साथ 4 बजे मीटिंग है, तब तक काम खत्म करके रखना।
Hello everyone, good morning. Yeah, we'll start off with navigation in Fusion HCM Cloud today. Some of you, or I think most of you, might be seeing the Fusion Cloud application for the first time. So I want to make you guys feel comfortable within the application. Okay, so I'll start off with a sign-in page. So I'll sign out of the application, and we'll sign in as a HCM implementation user. I'm signing in as HCM_IMPL2. And in any application or in the instances that I've given you access to, right, you will have HCM implementation users created from HCM IMPL, HCM IMPL1, HCM IMPL2. So it will go on till that way till HCM IMPL 20. Okay, so you have users created in this application by default from HCM IMPL. You have HCM IMPL1, HCM IMPL2, all the way till HCM IMPL 20. So in case the password is not working, so if you try to log into a particular instance, and if you get a authentication error, say for example, you try to log into ESCT instance, and in the onboarding email that I've sent out yesterday, guys, I've given you 2 instance links in there. I've given you 2 Fusion Cloud application instances link in there. And I've also given you an access to a sheet in Google Drive that we will always keep updated with the latest Fusion instance details. Okay. And when you try to log into a particular instance, maybe you pick up ESCT and you try to log into this instance as HCM_IMPL, that might throw an error. So when you try to sign in, you might get an error which says authentication failed. So what normally happens is, if you like with any other application, and you might probably notice it with your with the bank accounts especially, right? So when you try to log in with the wrong password, more than 3 times or more than 5 times, you will not be able to, or your account will get locked, right? So in a similar fashion, in Fusion Cloud application, your account will get logged, or the user account will get logged if you try to log in with a wrong password, wrong password for more than 5 times. And there's no option to set the user to unlock. Okay, so in Security Console, we have some setups available, or we have some settings available, but there's no option to set the user to unlock itself after few minutes. So for that reason, and the reason I'm explaining all this now is, whenever you try to log into an instance, if you log in as HCM_IMPL or HCM_IMPL1, if you get this authentication failed error, no need to ping me in WhatsApp. Just try to log in with a different user. Maybe try out 3 and 4. And if the password is not working for all the users, that means there is a genuine problem. At that point, you can highlight it to me. And moreover, you've got multiple instances in the Fusion Cloud application. If one doesn't work, pick up another instance and use it. Okay, and this is what you normally do in real time as well. As a functional consultant, you will be created a user account and you will log into it. You will access the instance URL and you will sign into the application. But when I cover the navigation, let me try to log in as HCM-IMPL2. Looks like HCM-IMPL3 is logged. Someone tried to log in with a wrong password. Once you log in, this is a first page you see. And what you're seeing here in the middle of the screen, this is basically called as a home page layout. That's basically called as a home page layout. Okay, let me just save this notes. Okay, I'll save it as. Okay, so what you see in the middle of the screen is basically a home page layout. And what you're seeing on screen now, this particular home page layout, this is called as a newsfeed home page layout. There's a specific name to it. Newsfeed home page layout. And apart from this layout, there are 2 other options called banner and panel. So this layout is much better looking layout, a newsfeed homepage layout, when compared to banner or a panel layout. And again, in the UI customization session, so we have a technical session planned to show you how you can customize the user interface of the application with the help of a sandbox. And in that session, I'll show you how you can change this homepage layout from a newsfeed homepage layout, which is what you're seeing on screen now, to a banner layout or a panel layout. Okay, and when you get the application, there will be a default theme installed on the application or applied in the application. And that default theme gives a default look and feel. It'll have an Oracle logo or maybe a Vision logo, and it'll have a message, and it'll come with a default homepage layout. And the look and feel of the application, all of it will be controlled by the theme that is applied in the application. And how do you know what theme is applied in the application? If you scroll to the right, after tools, there is an option called configuration. If you click on it, you have appearance. And if you click on it, that will tell you which theme is applied in the application. So there is a theme called UG default, which is basically a default theme applied in the application. Yes, whenever instance is rolled out to the clients, it comes with a certain look and feel, and there will be a default theme applied in the application, and it comes with a newsfeed homepage layout. Because in the recent versions, this is a default one. And if you look at this springboard, so this is a newsfeed homepage layout, and this particular area in the middle, this is called as a springboard. What is it called? It's called as a springboard. This particular area is called springboard. You see these options, right? You see these modules or navigation options, right? And when you go to each one of them, again, you will be able to see the work areas within it. Right? So this particular area is called springboard. And you have another option called Navigator here. How do you access it? You click on that, you click on those three dots, and that will open up something called as Navigator. Okay. And you have the navigation options. You have the same navigation options on the Springboard as well as on the Navigator. Okay, so you have Springboard and you have Navigator. And in these two options, you have modules showing up as menu options. And under each modules, you have work areas related to them. Okay, so if you go into My Client Groups, you see most of the HCM related tasks would be available here, or work areas would be available under here. And if you scroll to the right, you have a benefits administration module, and that shows you the work areas related to benefits administration. And similarly, you've got access to other modules as well. You're seeing other module navigation options here as well, like general accounting, or some of them are related to financial, some of them are related to supply chain. So when user logs in, point number one, what does he get to see in the application? What options among these will he get to see? And what he will be able to perform within the application will be determined by roles assigned to this user. So to the user, there will be roles assigned in the application, and those roles will determine what this user will be able to see in the application, meaning what menu options they get to see here, and what they will be able to perform in the application. Okay. And since the security is controlled, or since the access is controlled with the help of roles, the security, what's the backbone of a security in ERP or HCM cloud? It's referred to as RBAC. It's a role-based access control that works in the application. So we'll talk about this in detail over the next 2 days. Okay. So what does a role-based access control mean? User will have roles assigned to them, and those roles will determine what that user gets to see in the application, what navigation options, and what that user will be able to perform in the application. Okay. And you see these navigation options, right? A sales, service, procurement, me section, procurement, My Client Groups. And if you go into any of these sections, you will be able to see individual work areas again. So if you go into me section, you have your personal information tab, can view your directory, view your pay slips and all that stuff. And if you go into My Client Groups, you have most of the HCM related information here, or end user tasks you can perform from here. Like you can hire an employee, manage persons, manage absences, terminate a worker, or promote him, right? So all these end user actions typically can be performed by My Client Groups. And if you click on this, so what is the sequence of the options you see here? Sales, service, me, procurement, My Client Groups, right? So if you click on Navigator, you see the same navigation options there. And you can also click on Show More, and that will expand all the navigation options. Okay, all the menu options, and you get to see the work areas within it. So Oracle has given two different options, Navigator and Springboard, depending on your comfort level. Depending on your comfort level, you can use whatever you want. Typically, you would use Navigator if you want to access something for which you need a lot many mouse clicks here. Say, for example, when you are implementing some module, if you have to run a job, okay, as part of a process, if you have to run a job, what do you have to do to run a job in the application? Again, we'll talk about what is ESS job, where do you run it from in detail at a later stage. But if you want to run a job, I'll have to click on this arrow mark 4 times, and then I click on tools, and then I'll be able to see, I think it's disabled here, but you can enable it. There's an option called schedule process. You see the plus icon there, and you click on the plus icon. And after you click on the plus icon, you can search for the navigation option. And if you see here, you can determine, so under tools group, you have these many pages. Under tools group, you have these many pages. But how many of them do you want to see on Springboard? So what are visible on the Springboard at the moment? Only the checked ones. And if I want a schedule process also to show up in the screen, okay, I'll just enable it. And after I enable it, I'll click on save and close. And you have an option to reset it. If you reset it, what will happen? All the options which are enabled by default with the application, those will start showing up in there. And now that we enable a schedule process, you will start seeing that schedule process option here. So if I have to run the job, I'll have to go into this particular task. But remember, how many mouse clicks were required to come down to this particular task? If I am on a sign-in page, first I'll be in the sales tab, right? So I'll have to click on this 4 times, and then I'll have to click on tools, and then I'll have to click on schedule process. Now there are 2 options to reduce the number of mouse clicks. So if it's EBS, I'm not sure how many of you have prior EBS experience here. But in EBS, you have forms that are the major part of user interface, and you have all sort of shortcuts to quickly navigate around in the application. Okay, so you can, if you want to submit a job, you can press Alt F-VR and all that stuff. But in the case of a Fusion Cloud application, the number of mouse clicks required would be really high. You might get until you get used to the application, or until you get used to those high number of mouse clicks. Yeah, you will feel comfortable in the application as you start using it. Okay, and so instead of these many mouse clicks to reach a schedule process screen, there are 2 options for you that can help you. One is you click on the navigator so that you don't have to click on it those many times. And instead of click on show more, so what you can do is you can scroll down to the group, you know which group that navigation option will be part of. You expand it and you click on schedule process. So this is one straightforward way. No mouse clicks, just click on the navigator, go to the group and click on the task. And another option is, so as a user, so if you talk about the navigation in the application, you should be talking about it from an end user standpoint, because that is application is basically built from them, right? Built for them. You and me will do the implementation probably for 3 to 6 months, and we will move on. It is basically the end users who will be using this application for years. So application will be built, or the features will be built in such a way that it makes the life of or it should make the life of an end user comfortable. And if I'm a HCM IMPL user too, okay, not every HCM IMPL user needs to act on frequent things. One user might have to frequently do something, and another HCM IMPL user might frequently have to do something, or another user might probably have to do something frequently. Okay, so let's say you are a payroll administrator. You might have to access payroll related tasks or payroll related process quite frequently. But if you're looking after core HR, you might probably have to do a task like hiring an employee, terminating it, or promoting him, right? So each user has a set of actions that he does on a quite frequent basis on a day, maybe every day. So for example, if I have to access this particular screen at least 10 times a day, instead of going in there or accessing it this way, what I can do is I have an option to add it to a favorites. I can click on the schedule process screen. See, one way to access it is from Navigator. You can do that, and another way that you can handle this is you can go into the star mark. You can go into favorites, and in the favorites you can add. You can get into a particular task that you access quite frequently, and you can add it to the favorites. And you can give it a name as well. Yes, I want to call this as monitor process. And I can also create folders here if I want. And so that I can see and I can use folders to group the navigation links again. If I don't put it in any folder, it will show up like this here. You click on save and close. And now if I have to come back to a home page from any page that I am in, I just have to click on this home button. That will bring me back into home screen. And if I have to go back now, let's say I logged in tomorrow into the application, and tomorrow also I have to submit a job. So I just click on this and I click on monitor process. That will take me directly into the schedule process screen. Okay, so two different options. And you also have a search box here. It doesn't work really well, but yeah, Oracle is trying its bit to refine the way this search works. So you can also try out something here. So you can also search for a task. Some tasks do show up here. When you do a search, it will search for the tasks within the groups, and it will show up those options as well. Say, for example, if you want to, maybe this is, yeah, I think it takes a bit of time. Yeah, I think it's taking a bit of time to pull the results. But that's okay. Yeah, you can probably try out a few searches here. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, and when you get into individual work areas, you will have when you get into these groups, you will be able to see the pages within it or the groups, and these groups, or you can also call them as work areas. Okay, and from these groups, what you can typically do is, usually this is the case, you from these groups, what you can typically do is perform the transactions. Okay, so if you are responsible for managing core HR module, or if you are yeah if, and what is it that you might probably be doing? You might probably be doing all this. You might be hiring an employee, changing an assignment, promoting an employee, or terminating him, or you might probably manage the persons. But for you, before you could hire an employee, you might probably have to set up the HCM module first, right? Only after you do the core HR related configuration, you will be able to hire an employee. But where do you do those setups from? Yes, hiring an employee, you see that you have an option called My Client Groups. You can click on New Person. And you see navigation options here to hire a variety of workers. And if you click on Hire an Employee here, that will take you to a page where you can enter the information about an employee and hire him. And hiring an employee is I mean, you have to fill in quite a bit of information there. You have to enter the employee personal details. And then you have to, in the next page, you have to enter employee address information, followed by employee assignment information, compensation, and then you submit the request. And what needs to happen when this request is submitted, that is also, again, something that you can control as an implementation specialist. So for many processes in HCM, you do have an option to enable approvals. And depending on your client requirement, you can also determine how many levels of approvals or who should approve a certain transaction. So for example, if you're hiring an employee, let's say you are an end user and you hired an employee. If client says that whenever an employee is hired, he should not be automatically inserted into the base tables, or he should not be inserted into the application. Instead, it should go through two levels of approval. So it should go to your manager for approval. After your manager approves it, it should go to maybe a payroll manager or a second level manager. And only after that, employee should get hired in the application. In such case, what you do, I'll show you how to set up those workflow rules in the workflow approvals and notification session. For a given process, I'll show you how you can write approval rules using a variety of conditions. You will set up those workflow approval rules from the transaction console. And once you do it, we will also test it by doing a variety of transactions. So once those approval setups are done, which you will be doing as an implementation specialist, and when the end user starts doing the transactions, say for example, when he hires an employee, he enters all the information and submits it. That doesn't mean employee gets created in the application automatically. So if that employee, so if you submitted a request to create, or say another user submitted a hire an employee request, and for that employee, let's say you are a manager, HCM IMPL user 2 is a manager. What will happen? Immediately you will start seeing a notification showing up at the top here. Okay, so any approvals pending on your name, okay, be it jobs or be it employees or positions, whatever requests be it absences, whatever requests are pending on your name. When I say request, approval request, or any notification that's on your name, they will show up here. Okay, so if you click on this, if you click on the navigation option, this would show you all the notifications. And notifications can be of two types. It can be for your information notifications, like this one. They basically gives you information. Okay, and you don't need to act on them. So yes, you can probably click on them and see what's going on there. So this is a sort of a for your information notification. You can just view that information and you can dismiss it. But there are others in the list where you need to act on them. Okay, so you see that a particular task is assigned to you, and the welcome kit is assigned to you, and you need to perform some action on top of it. And sometimes you might also see approval request pending in here. And if it's an approval request, you will also see approve and reject buttons showing up here. And as an approver, you can click on it, you can look at the details, and then you can act on it accordingly. Okay, so that's about the navigation options. This will not be helpful for HCM, you can ignore it. And going back to the point that I was discussing earlier, so when you have to use the application as an end user, you will be doing it from the Springboard usually, or from the Navigator. But for you to use the application, implementation specialist should have configured the application first, right? Yes, some of the tasks can be configured, or some of the modules can be configured from a Springboard itself. But usually there is a separate screen. But to make our life easy as an implementation specialist, what Oracle did is it has given a separate screen altogether for us to do the setups or to set up the application. And how do you access that screen? To access that screen, you have to click on the username. So you see the username, you click on the drop down, and you see this administration tab. And there is, remember I said that whatever user can see will be determined by roles assigned to him, right? And if that user has a certain roles assigned, so if a user has a role called application implementation consultant, we'll talk about them in detail. I'll clearly highlight some of the important roles that you need to be aware of. Okay, so if a user has application implementation consultant role, which is like a superpower role, and if that role is assigned, they will get access to this particular group, or whatever you're seeing under administration. And what that means is, yes, you can administer the application. And if you look at this particular option under it, we'll talk about others later on. If you talk about a setup and maintenance in specific, if you click on it, it'll take you to a screen called Functional Setup Manager screen. And this particular screen is called a Functional Setup Manager screen, FSM. And within a Functional Setup Manager, and again, we'll have a detailed session on this one later on, but just to give you a quick high-level overview here, in FSM, this is basically a single user interface to do or to set up any module in the application. It doesn't matter whether you are implementing financials. It doesn't matter whether you are implementing SCM modules or PPM modules or HCM modules. You will be using the same form or same screen to do the setups. So the first thing that you see here, so this is basically called as a offering. So you first select offering at the top. That will be based on a project that you're working on. If it's a finance related implementation project, you select financials. And if it's a HR related implementation project, HCM related one, you select the appropriate one. Okay. So if it's a HR related one, you select a workforce deployment. And you select the offering at the top, and depending on the offering, you select the functional areas will change, and you will see the functional areas. In other words, you can think of them as the modules or sub modules that you need to set up for this offering to be configured. And one good thing with FSM is, even though you are a new B2 application, so even though this is the first time you are doing learning core HR, or any module for that matter, you need not be aware of the sequence in which you need to do the setups. Okay, because if you are an experienced user, you would probably know that but to implement a core HR, you have to perform setups in a particular sequence, right? But for you to reach that stage, you would have to do at least 1 or 2 implementation projects, right? So, but till that point, these functional areas that you see here, the moment you select an offering, these functional areas will show up here. And you can probably do the setups in a same sequence in which the functional areas are listed down here. There might be some exceptions here and there, but usually this is a flow. So you'll create users first, you set up enterprise structures, and you create legal structures, and then you load in the workforce structures after that, workforce structures, organization structures, etc. And then you configure the modules after that. You go ahead, and these setting up enterprise profile till users and security, this comes under core HR setups. And once the core HR setups are done and the employees are in place, you can go ahead and implement other modules and payroll, absences, etc. And whenever you select a functional area here, like let's say, for example, if you select legal structures, the moment you select a functional area, the tasks in this particular table will also change. This particular table will show the tasks related to the functional area that you select here. So if you select organization structure, you see a completely different set of tasks here. And by default, this table will show only the required tasks for that particular functional area. And you have an option to change it or switch it to all tasks. And when you switch it to all tasks, it will show you optional as well as mandatory tasks. So this basically shows you all the tasks related to setting up legal structures. And who will come into this page or who accesses this page quite frequently, it will be you and me as an implementation specialist. And this page might also be used by a support team. So even post go live, there would be few end users who would be using the application. But whenever some enhancements need to be done, or maybe a new legal entity needs to be created, or maybe a new job needs to be created, in such cases, end user will also be able to help themselves. Not the end user. You can to some users you give more than allowed. So for some users, you assign a role that will let them be able to come to this particular screen and perform this task as well. So it will be usually the implementation specialist who will be using this screen quite often. But even post go live, when some additional setups need to be performed, client will also be using the same screen post go live as well to do those additional setups. Okay. So, and when you select a specific functional area, again, what do you see? You only see the required tasks. And if you change it to all tasks, it will display the related tasks as well. Okay. And you have an option to search for the tasks here. And when you search for a task, so when you search for tasks here, application will search for that particular task, not only in that functional area, but it will also search in that offering altogether. Okay, so I'm in a legal structure screen, right? But if I search for, say, a business unit, okay, if I search for business unit, it shows me that yes, there are 2 tasks related to business unit. One is manage business unit and another is manage business unit set assignment. But where are these tasks located, under which functional area? I am in legal structures functional area, but these 2 tasks are available in organization structures functional area. So when you search for a task here, please be aware that application will search for that particular task, not only in the functional area that you are in, but also in the other functional areas. But what you need to be aware of is, it doesn't search for this particular task in other offerings. Okay, maybe you cannot do a journal setups by selecting a workforce deployment. Okay, you cannot do that. So when you search for a task, it works like a local search, and it searches for a task only in the functional areas available within that particular offering. But sometimes you might have some tasks which are applicable across modules or across offerings. Or sometimes you might not know under what offering the task is included in the application. In such case, what you can do, instead of using the local search, if you click on the tasks ribbon here, if you scroll, if you look at the last option there, you have an option to search for a task across the application or in the entire application. How do you do it? You click on search, and this is like a global search. Think of it like a Google search, but this searches for, it doesn't exactly work like a Google search, but when you search for a task here, application will search for that particular task throughout the instance. Okay, not in any specific module. So if you search for manage, say for example, if you want to look at the jobs that are defined in the application, you search for a manage enterprise job. And when you search for a specific task, and yes, the pattern search will work, you could see that the 3 tasks have come out, and those 3 tasks, they belong to different modules, right? So this is a clear indication that yes, when you search for a task here, it searches, application searches for the task across the modules or across the offerings. Okay, so those are the few things that you need to be aware of. And after you implement the, after you do the setups, or after you implement the modules, you're done with the configuration, then you will do the transactions to see if the configuration is working as expected. Maybe you hire a couple of employees and you do all sort of end user transactions to see if the setups are intact, or if you have set up the application in a way that clients want it to work. Okay, and that bit you will probably verify it from here. And apart from this, if you click on this drop down, there are a few more bits that you need to be aware of. So you have this about this application, right? So when you click on this, it tells you what version of the application you are using. Okay, so if someone asks you what version are you learning, it's release 13. Okay, and you're using a version of 21D. And I've also explained what these 2 bits are, right? So the number indicates the year you are in, and and every year will have 4 quarters, right? And Jan to March is quarter A, April to June is quarter B, and so on. So you have 4 quarters in a year, A, B, C, and D. If you are in the last quarter, the latest application that will be available will have a version number of 21D. And probably in June, or probably in Jan 2022, you will get a new version of your cloud application. And what will be the version number for that? It will be 22. Since it's the first quarter, Jan, it will be A, 22A, and in April you get 22B, and in the next quarter you get 22C. That's how it works. Okay. And there are a few things that you might probably want to do. See, usually if you are an implementation user, you will probably have a role called application implementation consultant assigned to you, and that will give you all the access that you need as an implementation specialist. Okay, and what are some of the screens that you get access to as an implementation specialist? You get access to this security console. Okay, and this will help you to control not just your roles assigned to your username, but you can also control the roles assigned to others as well. So you can basically control the security from this particular navigation option. And not just this, if you click on the drop down, yeah, if you are an implementation specialist, you do have access to security console. And if for whatever reason, if you want to reset your password, okay, or if you want to change the security related setups, you can go into the security console, and you have a number of options again here. So we'll cover them in detail in tomorrow's session. I think one session will not be sufficient. It'll go on for at least a couple of sessions, because security or implementing security in HCM cloud is quite important. And then that's the first thing that you start off with. Okay, so you have to get those basics right before we proceed with the modules. So you click on users, and you search for a specific user here. And whom did we log in as? We have logged in as HCM IMPL2. So you search for that user, and when you search for a user, it shows you, pick up the user. There's some information that's available here. It tells you the username, the first name and the last name with which it was created, email ID, and it'll also tell you when the password will expire. But this bit is fine. It's a common thing that you see on a user definition, but this section is important, the roles. And these roles that are assigned to the users, will determine what this user will be able to see in the application and what this user will be able to do in the application. Okay. And again, when it comes to roles that are assigned to the users, there are multiple types of roles in there. We'll talk about them in detail tomorrow, but you have something called as job roles. Okay, job roles are what you typically assign to the users. And apart from job roles, you also have some more topics that you need to understand in security, like what is a privilege, what is duty role, what is data role, and what is job role. So first, we'll get into those basics tomorrow. But for today, what do you need to know? User will have roles, and these roles will control what this user can see in the application and what he can do in the application. Okay, and you can also control the data set as well that this particular user will have access to. Okay, so if you hire an employee, and if, say, for example, you hired a payroll administrator, or maybe a HR manager, or maybe a HR specialist, but that user should have access to only North America data, or maybe India business unit data. Okay, so yes, you hired a HR manager, but that user should be able to manage employees in a specific legal entity or in a specific BU. How do you restrict the data access, or how do you grant access of only that particular legal entity or that particular business unit to the users? So that is another very important concept, and that is basically called as data security. So when it comes to security, there are two bits in there. So how do you control what this user will be able to perform or what he gets to see? That will be based on the roles assigned here, typically the job roles. And you also have a data roles that will be assigned, and those data roles will determine what data set the user gets access to. So will this user be able to see India business unit data or some other legal entity data or all legal entities data? So that will be determined by, again, by the roles or the security setups that you do. And we'll talk about them in detail tomorrow. Okay, and this is where you have an option to create a new user as well. So we'll start off with this one tomorrow. Let's go back. And the reason I brought you in here in first place is, so if you have to reset your password for whatever reason, if you are an implementation specialist, you can come down to Security Console and you can click on Reset Password here. And you can automatically generate a password, or you can manually key in the password here. But not every user will be a super user, right? Not every user will have this, application implementation consultant role assigned. And what does that mean? That means not many users will get to see this administration section at all. But still, as an end user, if you want to change your password, you can, under personalization, you can go into set preferences, and that will give you an option to change your password. This is something that end user might probably want to do. And apart from this, there are a few options which are not relevant to us, but there are a few options that might probably be relevant to the end user. So if end user wants to change the password, he can come in here, click on password, and it gives you an option to enter a new password, or enter the current password and enter a new password which you want to update to. Okay, and you can, so when you get into the application, you might, in some of the screens, you might see date fields, you might have currency fields and all that stuff, right? So you can also set up, you can also do some settings to control how you want those a date formats or a currency or a time formats to appear within the application. Okay, so you see that there are some default settings that the application come with. We usually don't change this, but if required, just be aware that you can change the date and the time formats if you want. Okay, you go back. Yeah, basically these are the things that you need to be aware of in the navigation. And we'll start off with our first module tomorrow, which will be security in HCM cloud. And the way we go about it is not just tomorrow's session. All the sessions will be mostly hands-on. The way we approach security is, first we will come here, we'll create a user account. We will assign a basic role to that user, maybe an employee role. And then we try to log in as that employee from a different session, and we will start playing around with security. Okay, I'll show you how you can assign roles, and we will also see what changes adding a role to the user profile makes to his profile in the user interface. Okay. Any questions, guys? Any questions in what we have covered today?
Hey, hi Prasad. This is Manisha.
Yes, Manisha.
My question is, like you said in the Springboard, can you please show me the screen?
Yes. I'm back on the Springboard.
Yep. So, like you said, in the top there is a different modules, right? Cash management.
Correct. Yeah. You have groups.
Okay, and in the particular module there is a different kind of functional area.
That's correct. Yeah, you have groups and pages, and another way to call them as modules and work areas. And the actual name for this one is info tiles, because they look like tiles. But yeah, there are a lot many terms people use to refer to those work areas or to individual tasks. But yeah, you can call it as a module and a work area, or a group and a page. Yes.
So this module is reflecting due to this particular implementation specialist, or only only for everyone?
No. This will be, see, when you create a user. So probably this will become clear in the first 10 minutes in tomorrow's session. When you create a user, so what we do is we will create a user tomorrow, a new user, and we will assign him only employee role. And when we log in as that new user into the application, he will get to see only one or two groups from this. He doesn't see all the groups. So what you get to see, what groups you get to see in the application when you log in, what will determine that? The roles assigned to this user will determine that.
So in HCM, how many users, like especially works like implementation specialist?
Yeah, it depends on the complexity of the project. Some projects can be implemented with less than 5 implementation specialists. Some projects might require up to 10 implementation specialists, 10 to 15. It depends on the complexity of the projects. And as I mentioned yesterday, not every client implements all the modules, right? So you have in HCM itself, you have a number of modules. Some clients might implement only core HR. Okay, in which case you probably need a few consultants. But some clients might implement 5 or 6 modules in HCM, maybe a core HR, payroll, time and labor, absence management, etc. In which case you might probably need a slightly higher number of consultants. And it also depends on not only on the modules implemented in that project, it also depends on the timelines as well. Okay, so if some clients do have aggressive timelines, so they say that they want to go live in 2 months. Yes, is that possible? Yes, it is definitely possible in cloud, which is it's definitely not possible in EBS, but it's possible in cloud. And in which case you would have additional pair of hands in terms of consultants. There's no fixed number, no ideal number. It all depends on what modules you are implementing and what are the timelines you are looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, Prasad, when reading the documents, we mostly hear about a person spotlight and quick actions. Could you just, navigate through?
Yeah, if you go to quick actions, say, for example, if you want to perform an action, say, for example, if you want to hire an employee, there are 2 ways to do it. So one is I can come into my client groups and I click on this new person. Okay, I can come in here, and once I'm in this screen, I again see a different set of options. And if I want to hire an employee, I can click on this. But to come into this particular screen, or to hire an employee, I have to come into this particular screen and then click on hire an employee, right? And that will take me to a new hire page. But what's another way to do it? So some of the actions that like hiring an employee, which is a very frequent action that you will be, that you might probably have to perform as a end user. So what Oracle did is it has given such actions, or it has given rather a shortcuts to such actions, and those shortcuts will show up in quick actions here. So if you want to hire an employee, you can directly click on it. No need to click on this and get into a new page and click on hire an employee there. Okay, so Yes, some of the tasks that you get access to when you go into these work areas or info tiles, they will be available, they will be readily available here, which will help you to perform those actions in real quick time. Okay. Any questions, guys?
And yeah, and also person spotlight.
Probably I'll check it out and come back on that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one announcement, guys. Here, most of you have enrolled except a couple of guys. I'll be enabling passcode on this meeting from tomorrow, and you won't be able to join the session without that passcode. So when you dial in for the session, it didn't prompt you to enter a passcode, right? But from tomorrow, you will not be able to attend the sessions without entering the passcode. And I'll not be able to share the passcode without enrolling in the session or enrolling in the course. And to enroll in the course, please call me on this number or WhatsApp me. Or not immediately, I have a few more sessions lined up, but you can send me a WhatsApp message on this number probably after 2 or 3 hours, and I'll respond back and let you know the enrollment process. If you don't want to share your contact number, absolutely fine. Just drop a note on this email. I'll respond back and say share the enrollment formalities. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for your time, guys. We will start off with our first module tomorrow, which will be security.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.